So, very infrequently do I come across a movie that is bafflingly insulting, but also incredibly boring. A few days ago, my roommates and I were just trying to find something to watch, and one of them put on Miller's Girl because the screen cap had a picture of Jenna Ortega on it, and we want to know what she's up to, I guess. I'd already seen the Letterboxd reviews for it just because I was like, Jenna Ortega and Martin Freeman in one movie? Okay, sure. And I knew that they were awful. Basically, I was wondering why it exists.
Stop.
No.
Come on, like you don't notice, Cairo. It's like he's been living in grayscale and you're the first thing he's ever seen in color.
What is the word? It's not falling. That's too stale. It's more deliberate than that. It's recognition of what we really are. Ghosts. You do see me.
That's why I am here, sitting on the floor of my bedroom in my parents' house, because I'm back for Thanksgiving, and if you're wondering, yes, this is a doorknob. This was the best place to film so that you couldn't hear the goings-on in the rest of the house. I did some Googling, and I realized that the script had actually come from this very prestigious screenplay competition called the Blacklist. A lot of up-and-comers get their work on that, and through that they get agents, they get managers, they get their stuff made. It's a very, very big deal. So this script had been on this very prestigious list. It had been picked up. The author of the script had decided to direct it. From the beginning pages, I could tell that they were really taking a big swing with this one. The whole thing is very stylized, it's very vibey. In a funny way, it kind of reminded me of another film that was on the Blacklist, Juno. I hope that everyone has seen it, but if you haven't, watch it right now. It's about Elliot Page's character who gets knocked up in high school, and this character's journey through the pregnancy and figuring out what to do with this kid. So funny, so goofy. People in that movie just have like a certain cadence. It's a very specific world that they set up that I think is so cute and funny.
What's the prognosis, Fertile Myrtle? Minus or plus?
I don't know, it's not seasoned yet. Take some of these. No. There it is. That little pink plus sign is so unholy.
That ain't no Etch-a-Sketch. This is one doodle that can't be undid, Holmes Gillett.
And it reminded me of that because this script was also in a very specific world. I tried to write down how I would pitch it, and I said it was a Southern Gothic erotic thriller, kind of like a horny Shirley Jackson story. And I love Shirley Jackson. I think her stuff is so creepy. And it's this tiny, isolated town where everyone kind of talks in flowery prose. And to me, it kind of makes sense why it should work. It's like this up-and-coming writer with her script that gets in a very prestigious competition, and it's even kind of like subversive. It's about students seducing teachers. And while I may not agree with that message at all, I could kind of see how maybe people who were like a little too tired of the PC police might kind of latch onto this one as something that's like a new, interesting concept. And also it's written by a woman, so I guess that makes it okay. So basically the story follows this 17-year-old called Cairo Sweet. She is an exceptionally bright young woman who takes the English class of Jonathan Miller, and they form this kind of pseudo-flirty friendship. Meanwhile, Jonathan's wife is a hag who kind of like drives him into the arms of this child. It also deals with Jonathan's best friend, the gym teacher slash physics teacher, and Cairo's best friend, who's this lesbian who has a crush on Cairo but is also like weirdly horny for a bunch of older guys. This script was written by a younger woman. You'd think it wasn't based on everything that I'm saying. They bond over this writing, and then he rejects her when she writes this short story, which is a basically erotic fan fiction of her and him getting together. The rejection stings, and she uses the short story to ruin his life and his marriage, as she should. So with this subject matter, a lot has to work to make this work, because you're already doing something that is so taboo and so unpleasant for a lot of people to think about. In my notes, it says, fellow artist aside, don't want to discredit her work, because I've written stuff. I'm not as successful as this woman, clearly, because I don't have a movie that was distributed by a major studio that people can point to and laugh at. It's kind of hard for me to be such a hater. I basically just hope that the gods will absolve me, and that maybe if one day my dreams do come true and I get to make a movie for $4 million, someone will make a video just absolutely shitting on me for like a full hour and a half. And maybe the video has like 5 million views. Like in my fantasy, that's what I feel like would be a good retribution for all the mean things I'm gonna say about this script. So, moving on. I annotated the full script, but I'm just gonna like do my quick thoughts on this, like the notes. So the whole time, I can't tell if it's pretentious or it's a commentary on pretentiousness. Both Jonathan and Kyra are supposed to think they're a little smarter and better than everyone else, and I cannot tell if the script agrees with them or not. I think it actually does. They will craft these sentences that I will just think are so pretentious and annoying. Someone will respond to it in the script like, wow, that's really astute. So I'm kind of thinking maybe the author like thought they were cooking when they were like writing these long, flowery, Henry Thoreau-ass monologues. Scrolling down, I just remember I just wrote wordplay several times because the way people kind of talk to each other just doesn't really feel like a real conversation. It's not really how normal people interact with each other, and they all kind of interact in the same way.
You're overdressed as usual, I see.
Your underwear, as usual, I see.
And that's kind of what reminded me of Juno, because everyone is kind of silly, goofy, they say very funny things, but I think it works because it's a comedy and it feels like a world that you really want to step into. It's so rich and fun to be a part of that world while the movie's playing. And with this one, it is neither rich nor is it fun. So one thing I noticed about the script is that Boris, the other teacher, he is actually a criminal and he should be sent to jail. He'll ask a teenager if she's feeling good because she got laid, and people will be like, whoa, not okay. Kind of like he's offering someone weed in like a 90s PSA and not like he said something literally pedophilic. So that was harrowing to read and to like have him be the funny, likable one. Anyway, fuck that guy. And Jonathan, he's definitely supposed to be a flawed character, and he just allows Boris to say terrible things, not only about these students, but also about his wife. Boris says, oh, are you grouchy because she's not putting out? I feel like that's just such a disrespectful thing to say about someone's partner, and I can't believe that he allows that. And honestly, it really convinced me that Jonathan should be in prison as well. You get the feeling that no one goes to this school. So the entire school feels incredibly underdeveloped. It feels like no one goes there except for Kyra and Winnie. It just feels like a world that isn't finished in a way. No one else has any lines, and it just makes it seem like it isn't a real place. The screenplay kind of assumes that you're walking into it wanting to be assaulted with incredibly vulgar, kind of disgusting language, and I don't mean to kink shame. I think that anyone would think that, especially describing a relationship between a teacher and a student, I think that anyone would think that this would be like way too much too fast.
This is no romance. I'm sorry to disappoint you.
Mr. Murphy loomed over her, his Cadillac eyes hungry and bored.
I want you to read to me.
Alice watched in slow motion as Mr. Murphy's tongue undulated when he spoke.
Read it to me the way you read it to yourself.
I feel like it was a huge swing, but they sacrificed a lot for these vibes, and the vibes I didn't like. So now I thought I'd actually go through the screenplay, just because I found it online. A lot of screenplays that were in competitions actually are super easy to find with just a quick Google, so if you ever want to do that, I recommend it. Yeah, I thought I would just go through the screenplay. I annotated it. It ended up getting less annotating and more yelling at the screenplay as I read, because I was getting angrier and angrier at it, but just because I've like never seen it done before in any kind of YouTube video, and I don't know many things, but I can BS on a few things, so I just thought maybe I'd do that. So this is page 1. We're being introduced to Cairo. Right at the beginning, it's kind of important to set up your character. I've been told that you probably shouldn't do more than like 3 or 4 lines in a paragraph just because it looks a little clunky. At the beginning, you know, it's good to set up your character and the world that they're living in. I wrote vibes because I hate to say that I'm kind of influenced by Letterboxd reviews, but I really am, and one said that it was like a Wattpad fanfiction, and low-key that's exactly what I felt this was. I thought it was annoying that these were his 4 authors. I don't know why I said pretentious, no Vonnegut, like Vonnegut isn't pretentious. I thought it was frustrating that they connected over high literature, that they were like, us two are the only people that have read all the books we've read. It kind of rubbed me the wrong way as someone who loves their camp and their sci-fi and their fantasy and their cheese. Because some pretty fun stuff happens in those books, and if you're too pretentious to read them, then you're never gonna know how fun they are. Oh yeah, I put wordplay, because I was like, people don't actually talk like that, but it sets the tone. It's kind of like, woo, vibey, or whatever. I thought her name sounded a lot like fanfiction, hence Ebony Darkness, Dementia Ravenway ass name. Oh yeah, so Winnie comes in, this is Cairo's friend, 17 and gorgeous, 1 inch away from being inappropriately dressed, and she goes, I like this whole sweater without a shirt business. I like it very much. I remember being a high schooler, and I remember teachers that everyone was obsessed with, and no one would even dream of saying stuff like this, because first of all, they know it's inappropriate, and second, we were shy, like we were kids and they were grown-ups. Anyway, that was just something that completely took me out of what was happening. Yeah, I was saying that like everyone's kind of talking in the same way. It's a big swing. It worked for Juno. Obviously, I have my opinions on whether or not it's working here. So Boris he's a sports guy. He's wearing a Memphis Tigers hat. He says boys are too lazy to read porn, but like, how does he even know who Henry Miller is? It feels like something that the author assumes that everyone knows, but I mean, maybe call me an idiot, but I've never heard of this person in my life. So he says, if she's as smart as you say she is, then I'm certain she's reading his work for more erudite reasons than self-pleasure. First of all, gross. Secondly, who talks like this? I'm starting to get angry, as you can see by my 3 question marks. S is one of my very close friends who's very, very intelligent. She uses the word whom in a sentence. I don't even know how she does that or how she knows when to use it, but she does. And she would never say something like this because she's actually not pretentious. I'll just leave this on the screen. I hate that I have seen it, and now that it's a sequence of words that's in my brain, so I figured I'd torture you. Winnie Black's the best part of his morning. I said, why has he not been arrested? Because isn't that fucking repulsive? Anyway, he's supposed to be likable, I think. Yeah, another one of Boris's lines, I just started writing prison. This is another thing that I mentioned earlier. He's walking down an empty hall. The halls always seem pretty empty. It's never really established that there are a lot of kids that go here or what the kids are like. People say, oh, they're stupid, they're just hicks. That's kind of the vibe that you get from Cairo not fitting in with them. But you never actually see them. There's no description of what she is setting herself apart from, so it's kind of hard for me to understand like the world they're coming from, especially because they're kids. Your high school is your world in a lot of ways. Okay, so right here, these kids are making out, and she says, she's irritated but not surprised. This is Benson Agricultural High School. But we've never really seen what this school looks like. I don't know what it looks like. I get that it's an agricultural high school. I assume that implies that it's like a little hickish, I guess. But we don't see that. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I get that's the name of the high school, but like, I don't know what that means to you or to me. Has this person met a young gay person? She talks like she is in the imagination of a horny 14-year-old boy imagining a slumber party. And it's just like really annoying to me because everyone has so many opinions about what it's like to be a teen girl, and I feel like with stuff like Pen 15 and sex education, you get really heartwarming portraits, so I just don't know why we're going back to this eroticized lesbianism. I feel like we should have left that in the last century, frankly. Yeah, this is something that she says, there's something magic in the way these words and ideas come to you, unaccompanied and audacious, like stars before they come together in a constellation. I've never heard an actual person off the dome say something like this. They could say it in an essay. I know a lot of very, very talented writers, but it just does not strike me as something that an actual person would say to another human being. Yeah, where were you when I was in high school? Jail. I just started writing jail whenever they said anything gross. Also, the wife, she says this about a high schooler, And it's something where I'm like, I can't believe these women were written by another woman. It just doesn't feel real to me, frankly. Oh yeah, here. So Boris is the dumb one. He doesn't know what a misanthrope is, but he knows who Henry Miller is. Felt odd. We have this character laying in bed, watching herself eat a popsicle. Who does that? So then, this is a viewpoint that I'm like, why are we not challenging this? Cairo has this whole monologue about how she's not oppressed enough to get into a good college, like just because she has perfect grades, that doesn't mean anything anymore, which is hilarious because her parents are like rich attorneys, so if anyone was getting to Yale, it would be her. It just feels like the author believes this because, so there's no one to be like, maybe you actually, maybe being rich is actually enough. I mean, it was enough for George Bush. Ayo, 2001 called, don't start the Iraq War. Oh yeah, Jonathan says he's withering on the vine because he teaches high schoolers. I just think he's a fucking pretentious asshole. Teaching high schoolers is an absolutely heroic thing to do, especially because of how little you get paid. It feels like the opinions that this author holds, she actually thinks that he could be better. Okay, so here's another thing. Beatrice, who first of all is like not upset at all that a student wrote like a very explicit story about her husband, and he ends it with this amazing sentence, and she goes, shit, she's good. And I feel like that's the screenwriter, because you know, we know the same person that wrote shit, she's good also wrote this whole monologue. You're just calling yourself good for writing that. It just feels like a little silly goofy in my mind. So basically, Cairo convinces Winnie to send a picture of them making out to Boris, the coach / other pedophile. I'm just not sure what it's saying about teenage girls and lesbians. The only gay kiss that we see in this movie is two teenage girls doing it to seduce and manipulate an older man. And it just felt really terrible to imply that girls do this to like manipulate older men instead of the other way around. Okay, yeah, and this is another thing that I was saying about Boris. This really bugged me because Shakespeare is something that I consider myself like a fairly big nerd about, and it's something that I had to Google. He says, it sounds like you got a bad case of the Gertrudes. Jonathan says, the what? He says, methinks thou doth protest too much. I know that's Shakespeare, but where's that from? And apparently in the play Hamlet, Hamlet's mother, Gertrude, says that. She says, methinks the lady doth protest too much. What bugs me is that if Boris is the stupid one, how does he know not only that Shakespeare quote, but which character said it? It just bugged me so much because it felt like in that moment, it was like so clear that Boris is not a real person. All of these people are coming from the same background, and it's the background of the screenwriter. And, you know, is impressive that they know these things and that they're so well read. But what does it mean if all your characters have read the same stuff? It means that they're like cardboard cutouts of different people with like your face behind them. I think I said ugh because I was like, when you are yelling at your husband, when you think your husband has cheated on you and abused a child, this is not the language that you pull up out of your mind to yell at him with, and I just thought that was annoying. And she says, yes, she made me feel worth something. What does that tell you? It's like, tells me that we should have been divorced 10 years ago. Tells me that I never should have fucking married you. And then in the end, it feels like it's supposed to be meaningful. Winnie is a kind of sympathetic character, and she calls Cairo a monster, and she says, why are you doing this? Why are you trying to ruin his life? And she says there's no greater tragedy than mediocrity. She thinks he's mediocre, and she wants to ruin his life. It makes her out to be this siren that's set on destroying this man's life, instead of a young girl who had a crush on her teacher that he didn't know how to deal with and was inappropriate with her. And I just said, Chinos? At this point, I was really pissed off. Listen, I'm not shading anyone who wears chinos. You can be hot and wear chinos, but like, is it an adjective that you need to read in the middle of a scene? The answer is no. And that was this was my note. I think that sums up kind of everything that I have to say about the whole movie. Okay, so after I read the screenplay, I also watched the movie, and I took some notes about it just to see, like, does it shake up? Is it better? Is it worse? And I'll go through these kind of fast because I already pretty much talked about everything that was really annoying me. So The first thing I noticed about the movie is that I also started my first high school short film with close-ups of things in the environment because I did not know how to start a movie. And that's exactly what the director did. Maybe that's a little mean to make that comparison, but I remember I did it because I was like, I want to show this girl, but I didn't really have a good idea for an amazing first shot. So I just started out with a bunch of little stuff set to music, because that was what I could think of. And I was like, she got paid a lot more money than I did to do that. One thing I noticed, Mr. Miller is supposed to be in his mid-30s. At least that's what it says in the screenplay. And Martin Freeman is older. I honestly think that if the movie had the message that I wanted it to have, I would prefer that. Jenna Ortega is 22. It doesn't look that wrong for her to be with someone who's 35. You know, it's a little weird, but it's not like, this looks illegal, but her and Martin Freeman, they look illegal together. And I thought that even his wife is too young for him. I think that it was just because they wanted Martin Freeman to be in it, or he wanted to be in it, and he was the biggest actor they could get, so they were like, who cares if you're old? One thing I noticed about both the house and the school, in the screenplay it says that his house is like small and cluttered, and it is cluttered, but that house is beautiful. It's like a lovely, beautiful, big house. And the school is also supposed to be run down, backwater, but it's beautiful. I went to a school where there were raccoons that lived in the ceiling, and sometimes they would fall on students. I know what it's like to go to school in like an old ass building, and this was a new building. And it honestly kind of made me think maybe the production team doesn't know what it's actually like to be poor, because it's supposed to be like this small miserable town, but it looks lovely and bright and beautiful. I said the acting is good, they hired a lot of talented people, but it's not good enough to make the dialogue sound normal, which sucks.
Excuse me, but what's that you say? You want a chicken biscuit and a Coke. Well, you heard the boss. It's Chicky Bicky Cokey time. Let's go.
I noticed that, especially in the movie, you know, when you're reading a script, there can be some holes. It's good to, like, put characters in there that are real, but you know that you're not going to see everything. And it's really up to, you know, like a costume designer, a production designer, a prop master to fill in the world that these characters inhabit so it feels real. And it just felt like there was so little of that done. It was empty, not only with the characters and their relationships, but also visually. There were a lot of shots that could have had more information in them to tell us what town this is. When they're at this little restaurant, is it like shitty? Is there like the local football team's jerseys? The football field, is the grass overgrown? Does it look underfunded? Do the lockers have graffiti on them? It felt like they didn't do enough to really dress and make it real. And on top of that, Tennessee, it's supposed to be this hot, rainy swamp area, and I know my swamps. I really wasn't feeling any of that. I didn't really understand where these characters lived. So I actually had some thoughts about Boris, the other pedophile. In this, they cut out a lot of his like explicitly disgusting lines, and he actually seems a lot less like a criminal in the movie than he does in the script. And honestly, I think that makes me a lot more uncomfortable with him. To me, it just made him seem all the more nefarious.
Ain't you gonna say something? I dressed up just for you.
What you want?
I want to get into your physics class.
Why?
So Martin Freeman, it was like so weird to see him in this role because I more heavily associate him with another era of my life, and it was very disconcerting to see him be a skeevy teacher. But that being said, he was really, really good at it. I think that the script as a whole empathizes with him too much, but I think that he specifically does a really good job of being this guy. And I really feel that he feels that he just like can't help himself. And to that, I applaud him, even though it made me puke in my mouth a little bit. But he did what he came here to do, and I have to respect that. His wife is being such a bitch, like comically so. It feels like the narrative is encouraging us to believe that it is her actions that kind of drive him to meet this student by herself.
Honey, I've got to drop something off at a student's house.
Right, take care of it. Oh, get me some tampons while you're at it, right? Organic ones if you can find them.
Mm-hmm.
Not you, obviously, Amy. Fuck.
It's the timing of her being so terrible that drives him to go there alone, and I don't like that. So there's this buildup of all these feelings. So he brings her her phone, and then she sits down and writes this erotic story. She emails it to him. You're reading the story, and it's very explicit, and he's kind of enjoying it more than legally he should. And it's kind of cross-cut between what happened in real life and what's happening in this story. And I thought that it's a cool idea, and it would have been cool in any other context. You can kind of tell by the way it's shot, the way it's edited, the music, that it's supposed to be the culmination of this like erotic longing. There's no room in what's going on screen for all the revulsion that I feel. And that really rubbed me the wrong way. And then, she comes up to him and she's like, "What'd you think of my story?" And he just completely gaslights her. He's saying, "Oh, you're kind of a fool for thinking that there was anything here." And the monologue that she gives, it's totally her, and I think that she's a fantastic actress for this one. You see her heartbreak, and then you see her steeling herself and being like, "No, you're wrong, and you're a small, stupid, petty man for wasting my time, for breaking my heart." And while I'm obviously not super comfortable with the context of the monologue, I think that she's, in this specific situation, like, she's right.
You wanna fail me? I fucking dare you. If you are not very, very careful, this banality, this falsity that you wallow in, it will devour you until you are as small as you pretend to be.
They also say teenage girls are dangerous. And then Jonathan and Winnie have this commiseration moment where they're like, "We don't know what's happening with her. Like, she's evil. She's trying to ruin you." And then Jonathan goes to get interrogated by the vice principal, and he's very flustered because the vice principal is like, "Did you ever hang out alone together?" And it's cross-cut with her saying, "Yes, we did."
Sometimes we share a cigarette.
We happened to be smoking in the same place one time, and that's how it started, I guess. That is how we started smoking together.
It kind of feels like Kyra is supposed to be the villain in this scene where she's kind of getting him fired, but she hasn't lied about anything that she said. The ending scene, I guess everything's been pissing me off, but this one really did, because there's this montage and Winnie and Boris pass each other in the hallway, not looking at each other, because now Cairo has evidence that can implicate both of them in having this inappropriate relationship. And how downtrodden they look, they're looking away from each other. To me, it kind of implies that Cairo, like, ruined what they had. But I don't understand how that's, like, a bad thing, that Boris feels uncomfortable trying to catch a on a child. I don't know. Number one, pissed me off. Number two, so Cairo shows up to court to testify against Jonathan. And we see her grow up a little bit. Through the course of the movie, we see her find a style. She starts wearing more makeup. She starts getting some cool fits. And then at the very end, she like comes up and gets eye to eye with Jonathan, and she's not wearing any makeup at all. And she's wearing this very like conservative schoolgirl outfit. She wears a skirt, a sweater, and kids and looks terribly young. She waves at him a slow, sad smile, spreads across her face. Voiceover, checkmate. Which, pissed me off so much. Because it's implying that she is looking young on purpose to make him look worse. Because when she was like seducing him, she started wearing more revealing clothes. She started wearing more makeup. And it's kind of implying that by looking young now, she's doing it consciously so that the court sees her in a way that he didn't see her. Does that make any sense? And now that she's turning it around on him, she's like making herself look young on purpose, which is just so insulting to teenage girls. Because what's that implying, right? It implies that she's being dishonest by coming to court without makeup, looking young, instead of just thinking, oh, no, but she is young. Even though she was wearing makeup that made her look older, she's never not been a child. And to just think that she's doing it like vindictively, it kind of gives a lot of weight to the argument that girls deserve this kind of treatment if they're gonna dress too old. Oh, if they're gonna dress too mature, they deserve to be looked at by older men. And I don't know, it just feels like how could a woman write something like that without understanding the implications? So that's why I kind of feel less bad about ripping this to shreds as much as I have, because it just is so baffling to me that you would even write something that even implies something like that. Circling back to the beginning of this video, when I asked the question, why was this made? And the answer is, I don't know. I don't know. Someone thought it was a good idea and someone gave them $4 million to do it. It's not that I'm against showing these kinds of relationships, but what I'm against is at the end of the movie, he at rock bottom, he opens his computer and he starts writing again. Like, why does this pedophile get to use this experience to write? Why does he get that? Why does he get anything but prison? You know, I think that he is a villain and the script wants to be erotic, so it doesn't want to show him as a villain. I didn't really understand the town. You know, it's Hodong, Tennessee. I can kind of assume what kind of place that is. But if you're not from the South, if you don't know what it's like down there, you assume like Confederate flags and rednecks, and yeah, there's a lot of that. But there's no specifics. There's nothing to make me feel like this is real at all. It's okay to have a movie that's kind of in a liminal space. There are movies that I think do well in a space that doesn't really entirely line up with ours, but then why is it so visually boring? And I felt like it was really neatly sliding into this trope where the women are either evil little seductresses or nagging bitch wives, and the men were haplessly brought into the scheming of these women, which is also insulting. A lot of movies don't need to exist, but they're like fun. Pacific Rim, what's that about? But I would watch a giant monster fighting a giant robot any day over Bilbo Baggins trying to a Disney star. I don't know. I guess I wish that there was more I had to say, but that's really not the case. The pedophilia is just, it's baffling to me. And I frankly, I still don't know what to make of it. So I hope that you've enjoyed this rant. Maybe if you learned something a little bit about screenwriting, I guess if this happens to find any sort of audience, please let me know if you liked me going through the screenplay. I'm happy to do more of that because I think it's really interesting. It's something that I've spent a lot of time doing. So yeah, bye.